Hey guys, it's Dash Zach back with my first roundup, including the Phylina S480, the Delux M900 Mini Pro, and the Akko Pulse 1. What am I doing here? Anyway, these are a few mice that I feel like have not gotten the coverage they deserve, both on Reddit and YouTube, and I wanted to get them more out there in the world, both for your sake and for mine. We have another attempt at the HDS Plus, a unique small ergo, and Akko's first attempt at a serious mouse. Were any of them able to impress me? Let's find out. So I'm going to sort of rapid fire each of these mice, and I'm going to start off with the Phylina S480 here. The 480 is the same exact shape, more or less, as the Scyrox V6, as well as their predecessor, the Phylina S480. It is shockingly similar to the S480 in a lot of ways. You can see I've got a loose battery there, ignore that. It's basically just a lighter version, and it's cheap in the exact same way as the 450 was. What's interesting about the 450 is that at its time, it was sort of revolutionary. It was a great value as a budget mouse. I'm not so sure the 480 is going to stand apart in the same way that the 450 did. This is also the top of the line version of the S480. It does have 8K polling in a 3950. I tested this on 2K hertz, had no issues with the sensor. There was a slight bit of wireless interference. It wasn't a top tier implementation, but there was nothing left to complain about as far as a budget mouse goes. It passed in that way. Like its predecessor, it has the transparent Hawaiian blue shell pink dots, and they're pretty light and spammable here. They're not my favorite switch. I prefer non-transparent, and there is a fair amount of pre-travel you can see here on the clicks before actuating. Not much post-travel, a little bit of play, but nothing crazy there. Nothing like I saw in Aim-Adapt's video, which is interesting that my unit doesn't have that variance. They're probably like a 6 out of 10 on the clicks. Not my favorite, but they're definitely serviceable. The scroll wheel feels pretty cheap. It has defined steps, but they're very light steps, I would say, and the click itself is on the heavier side, and it doesn't rebound super well, so I'm going to actually not give the scroll wheel too much of a pass here. The implementation is very lacking. The side buttons are very light and spammable if you're just using them normally. However, you can sink them very far into the shell. I can actually get this front button here stuck in the shell. You can see it pops back out there a little bit, but I can get it wedged up in there and I have to play to get it out. There also was a point where I put some pressure here and I felt a large cracking noise inside of the mouse, as well as putting pressure on the bottom here for the build integrity, where I just... You might have heard that right there. That's a little scary. Oh, there it is. Pop the shell back in place. Not great here on the build integrity. You can tell that they skimped on some of the integrity the S450 had to get this weight down to the nice advertised 40 grams that this is, but they made a lot of sacrifices. There's also a fair amount of side-to-side play here on these side buttons. Looking at the bottom, I do like the skate designs, but these are the standard cheap PTFE skates from Phylina. They're slower, they're not high quality, and they're not as rounded as I'd like them to be. They're pretty crappy as far as stock skates go. The design is better than that of which I had on my original S450 here, where you had to shave down the edges to get these larger pad skates to stay on. And as you can see here, the original 450 also had an issue. This battery used to be placed here by default, which made this a very front heavy mouse. The S450 is much better balanced as far as the weight balancing goes. No front or back heaviness to speak of. The coating itself is a little on the slipperier side, but it's there. If there's any sort of humidity or moisture, you'll get a solid grip on this if you don't go too slippery. It's not my favorite coating, but it gets the job done and it's better than a lot of other budget mice, so I'll give it a strong pass there. Overall, again, the shape is very similar to that of the Scyrox V6, and that's the main mouse you're going to want to compare this to here. And for the value, this comes in at about the same price as the Scyrox V6, maybe $5 to $10 cheaper. And honestly, I just don't know why you would ever get this unless you could somehow find it really cheap for $40. Even so, some of the build integrity issues you saw there with pressure on the sides, pressure on the bottom causing a popping noise, just not generally well implemented clicks here with the transparent blue shell pink dots versus the super spammable, super tactile clicks of the V6. It's far superior coating, side buttons, and scroll wheel. I have Magic Ice on here, but the default skates were a little bit better than that on the S480 as well. Yeah, again, honestly, if this mouse had come out 2 years ago, it'd be an absolute banger at 40 grams with this shape and these qualities, but the V6 blows it out of the water in every way, and for $5 to $10 more, you're going to want to go with the V6 all day long. Just an aside, all of these are kind of emulating the G-Wolves HTS Plus, which is a successor to their HTS Now Ultra and original HTS Ace. These are a little bit longer than that original mouse, so I guess shout out to G-Wolves for the original shape, but the Scyrox does it the best. One thing to note, there is something about the S480 that feels a little bit smaller in hand. I think it tapers off a little more quickly here in the top. The dimensions on Ela's shape and what I could measure came out the same all around as far as length, width, and height, so I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, you can see a little bit here. It's a little bit more height here in this part of the V6, which you can feel in hand. I do like the slightly smaller shape of this, but the implementation just falls behind. Next up, we have the Delux M900 Mini Pro, a little banger of an ergo that I think I got gypped on from AliExpress. This was notable because it was possibly going to be a 40 gram ergo in a smaller size, which is unheard of, and this actually is the 49 gram 500 milliamp hour battery version that I did not pay for on AliExpress, but that's cool. It is what it is. It also claims to have 8K polling wirelessly across the board, as you can see here, but that is not the case. I appear to have gotten this version right here, which has the 500 milliamp hour battery and weighs about 46 grams, plus or minus 2 or 3. On my scale, it does have a coating, as well as the transparent blue shell pink dots. Can't seem to escape those subpar switches, in my opinion, but anyway, also does not have the Inwork MCU that the Pro Plus and the Ultra have. Potentially better performance there, but not something that I really saw an issue with, so I have the $33.95 version. Honestly, if I were to buy this again, I'd probably go with the same one, the Mini Pro at 40 grams and a 230 milliamp hour battery, or potentially go for the Ultra with the higher level sensor and chip, as well as the small battery, but maybe mod that down to 200 milliamp hours. Not sure if I would prefer the green transparent white dots here versus the blue transparent pink dots. I will say these are a more tactile switch, and with how it clicks in this feel, maybe that is the play. Anyway, again, this is a smaller ergo and it's extremely comfortable in hands. The transparent horizontal blue shell pink dots are pretty darn well implemented in this. They're very light and very spammable. They're not my favorite clicks, but for some reason I found myself enjoying them when I was using them in game, which is not something that I expected to occur. There's not really a lot of play left and right here, just a tiny bit, but we're helped out by this middle piece here. And if you press down and press left and right here on the top of the button, not really much to write home about there. So again, pretty well implemented. It's still a light to medium actuation here in the middle of the button, which is always a plus for those who grip in a more aggressive claw way. The scroll wheel has defined steps and they're very light. The click is medium actuation but very spammable and stands apart from something like the S480. As far as the side buttons go, they're not the most tactile. They're sort of lighter and I don't really enjoy that. The front button is better than the back button. There is some side to side play here and it does have that cheap quality where you can sink this super far into the shell. Never love that on a budget mouse. But for $35 to $40, we are dealing with what we have here. Looking at the bottom, this is actually one of the upsides of the mouse. Really nice big pad skates here. They're not the thickest skates, but they do seem very high quality. They're rounded and they have a very smooth, very nice glide. They're a little bit faster than your standard stock skate, so I really enjoyed that part of the mouse. As far as the coating goes, it is there. It probably compares to like the lower end ATK coatings. It's not amazing, but it does feel good in hand. It's like a chalky, buttery feeling. It's on the slicker side, but you can get a good grip if there's some moisture. You can see my hand slipping off the back there, so not a strong point of the mouse. It's not bare plastic, but it's just a little bit better than that, I would say. As far as build integrity goes, you can actuate the side buttons here by applying pressure. There is some flex you can see here. It's not egregious. You won't notice it in game, but it is there. On the bottom as well, a fair amount. You can see the sensor ring moving there as I apply pressure. No real concerns about putting pressure here on the front of the mouse. No caving in at the top back. Those are the two main concerns that I have when I'm testing a mouse out like this. I'm not sure what this exactly here is, but you can sink this down really low as well. Cause a weird creaking sound, which is kind of weird. Don't love that, but I mean, it also actuates the clicks. Not really sure what's going on there. Overall, the two main things about this mouse to remember would be if you get the 40-gram version, that is extremely light, one of the lightest ergos on the market, and it is just a nice, smaller, sub 120 millimeter length ergo. It's extremely comfortable in hand. I have 19 by 10 hands, and the way I grip the mouse, this is very comfortable. You get a little bit more maneuverability than you would on some of the larger ergos that the market is very used to. And another thing to note, the side buttons are higher up, but not insanely high up here, which is a problem that some other ergos have. Overall, I really enjoyed my time on this mouse. I was able to perform pretty well. Part of that going to the nice glide of the stock skates, as well as just the size of the mouse. The clicks, while not being perfect again, were quite usable and allowed me to spam in static scenarios. No issues there. As far as shape comparisons go, overall size-wise, it sort of compares to the AJ179, which is the Lamzu Thorn shape. The Delux M900 Mini is not nearly as bulbous as this, but length and overall size-wise, it kind of matches up. A couple things to glean here from the bottom view is it does have a fair amount of width to it. It also is not the most aggressive as far as the curvature goes. As you see something here on like the Thorn, the Dex, or even I want to say the X-Lite V3 is just more of a defined curvature to it. Whereas on the M900 Mini, this part's pretty flat here, which is pretty comfortable in hand. And even the curvature here on the other side, not that severe really. As you can see here, this thing is dwarfed in size by the Deathadder V3 Pro. Not a surprise as that comes in around 5 or 6 millimeters longer. And taking a look at the profiles, these aren't the furthest apart mice as far as shape goes. Much shorter on the M900 Mini, as well as just a slight bit less curvature on both the top and the bottom of the mouse as far as the bottom profile goes, as well as having a relatively low click height for an ergo. Last up, we have an interesting one. That is the Akko Pulse 01, a mouse I was very interested to try, and there's a reason for that. Akko very much into the keyboard space. This is their first serious gaming mouse, as they put it directly to me when I was speaking with them. It's virtually a GPX shape, which will give you a comparison. More or less a GPX shape. As you can see here, there's a slight difference in the length of the mouse, making this hump a little bit more pronounced here in the center. And as you can see here, there's a slight bit more curvature. The sides aren't quite as flat. A little bit more flare in the rear there on the Pulse 01 versus the GPX, but the general spirit is the same. Spec-wise, this mouse knocks it out of the park. It has the Nordic MCU 3950, up to 8K polling. I was like, wow, Akko, they're knocking it out of the park. They've not done what other people have done and skimped on the polling rate, skimped on the sensor. They've knocked it out. Top of the line specs here. But then the elephant in the room hit. The listing on their site didn't really show this. The rumors came out and it was true. This mouse is a brick. It's heavy as all can be, which, you know, that's fine. Like, for example, I'm testing this on my brand new Raiden that I just got in. Amazing pad. If you take a heavier mouse, you up your sense a bit, you play on a faster pad, you can get past that weight. So their job was to implement this heavy mouse, which is over 70 grams, as well as they possibly could. Did they do that? Well, here we go. Some issues. This has the Kale white swords in the clicks. The clicks themselves, medium actuation, pretty spammable. Fair amount of pre-shove you can see there before actuation. Fair amount of post. As far as play goes, not much to write home about. Well implemented there. They just feel kind of hollow and plasticky. They're just not really satisfying clicks to actuate. The left click here even, I don't know if you can hear that. The left click here is even hollower This is the right click. This is the left click. The left click even has more of a cheap plasticky feeling. And as you know, clicks are one of the things that I value the most in a mouse, and these just aren't really doing it for me, unfortunately. The scroll wheel has very light steps. They're defined, but they're not the most defined. But the click is medium to heavy actuation, but light and spammable. I do enjoy the click, so a plus to the mouse there. A very nice scroll wheel. The side buttons, a massive plus to this mouse. Pretty centrally placed, which is very appreciated as my thumb typically sits back here on the mouse. And long and large, another plus. There is a little bit more pre-travel than you'd like, but nothing crazy. They are pretty spammable. I would say my complaint here is that they're too heavy. The force to actuate them is just a bit too much. So if they could lighten that up, that'd be a huge plus. They do not sink into the shell at all, which I would hope not, given how much this mouse weighs. The build integrity is quite good, and there's high quality here on the side buttons. Coming to the bottom, they did a good job as they have two large pad skates here. They're almost hard to see with the white on white. I wish they were thicker, and I wish they were more rounded on the edges. They're not bad as far as quality, but they are on the slower side of stock skates, which is quite slow. I tried these out on a control pad, and with the weight and the slow skates, it was almost unplayable for me. I had to swap back to this Raiden. Two things that are massive issues here on the bottom, though. This dongle storage window here, if you're playing and applying any pressure, you can hear this drag and it will slow your mouse down and make little noises, as well as this switch here to go from Bluetooth to off to 2.4. If you're just playing normally, you can see this is a little bit loose here. You can actually hear this moving as you are moving the mouse around your pad, and that just really bothered me. A slight oversight. All you have to do is recess this a little bit more. As you can see, it sticks up there a bit. So just very small attention to detail issues that could easily be resolved on future mice, but are not well implemented on this. This dongle storage does come with the 1K dongle here. Another side note on this, I had to sort of jerry-rig their extender into their 8K dongle, which is just it's something I never had to do before. It was the unique experience. Once I did that, though, a very stable polling rate, a very good experience on this mouse. Prior to that, I was having some issues because I had to put this 8K dongle directly into my computer, and as you can imagine, that distance caused a lot of interference and some inconsistencies, but I'm not sure if this is intended, but that's what I had to do to get a solid experience. Coating-wise, there is a coating there. It's pretty smooth. It's almost like if Zowie was on a white mouse and it wasn't quite as grippy, but I would say overall, coating is probably about a 7 to 10. I'm glad it's there, but it could be a little more rubberized if I wanted this to be a perfect mouse. However, I think for their first mouse, Akko put a lot of good things into this. The spec sheet, quite well done. A lot of the aspects like the scroll wheel and side buttons, huge pluses. I would suggest, I don't know, if it's the plastic that's used on this M1 and M2 buttons here, if they tightened up the pre and post travel a bit and just did something to get rid of this sort of hollowy, plasticky feel. The actual click implementation itself is fine as far as usage, but it's just the sound and the feel that just really didn't do it for me at all. And then again, just including some higher quality, slightly thicker, slightly more rounded skates and touching up the bottom issues that we had here. I will say they're on the right track. If they can shave maybe 20 grams off of this and tighten up a few things, this could be an absolute banger of a mouse. Right now, definitely a work in progress in my opinion. Especially coming in at $80 when you can get something with the M900 A7 or potentially the ATK A9 coming out soon, or anywhere from $30 to $50 depending on what version you get. So a quick recap of my thoughts on these mice. The Phylina S480, a little late to the game, a little overpriced for the quality that you're getting. I will say when I was using the mouse, this was my favorite in hand of these three mice. It's a worthy clone of the HTS Ultra, but it's just outclassed by the Scyrox V6. If you can find this for half price, maybe $40, I wouldn't mind picking it up, but the Scyrox V6 is going to offer the more premium experience all around. The Delux M900 Mini, a banger of a smaller ergo, sub 120 millimeters in length, and you can get the small version that's 40 grams. Not perfectly implemented, it does have its flaws, but I really enjoyed my time with it, and if you want a smaller ergo, I can recommend that you go and pick this up right now. It's actually one of my favorite mice I've tested recently. One of those mice that I can't quite put my finger on why I enjoyed it because there were some flaws, but I did, so that's that. Lastly, the Akko Pulse 01, a keyboard company moving into the mouse space. They did a lot of things right, but there were some shortcomings that they need to clean up. I think if they do that, they can really have a nice spot in the mouse space going forward. They just need to work on making this a little bit lighter and making the clicks, skates, just a little bit more high quality so that we can get what we're really looking for here from Akko. Rapid firing some weights, we have the stock S480 coming in at exactly 40 grams on the dot, in comparison to its predecessor, which came in at 57 grams, as well as the Scyrox V6, which was better implemented and comes in at 43.2 grams, so it does win on weight there. We have the Delux M900 Mini coming in completely stock with the 500 mAh battery at 48.8 grams. Remember, this can be closer to 42 grams probably, plus the plus or minus 2 if you get the 230 mAh battery version. Lastly, a couple different measurements for the Akko Pulse 01. This is advertised at 69 grams plus or minus 5, which is quite the range. Odd choice by them there. Stock with the dongle on the storage and the dongle in it comes in at 77.9 grams, a massive weight. If we pull off this cover here and pop out the dongle, which is how I was using it to get less drag as well as lower weight, it actually actually comes in at a functional 76 grams. Still a little bit high on my scale. I like to see a mouse under 70 grams, probably closer to something like 65 grams. So if they can push this closer to 60 grams in the future, huge win. This M900 Mini here has the most interest as far as measurements go. So we have 59 here, right in the middle of the mouse, more toward the front, coming in still right around 59 millimeters, and the back flare maximizing out at around 64.5 millimeters. Again, the mouse comes in at roughly 119 millimeters in length, and our hump height maxing out just under 40 millimeters, so not super tall for an ergo either. So that about wraps up for my first review roundup. Let me know what you thought of this format of reviewing mice, sort of a slightly abbreviated version of my normal review, but giving me the chance to cover more mice in a shorter time period. I'd sort of developed a backlog here, and I needed to clear a few mice out that I still wanted to see the light of day, so this is the result of that. I'll mostly attempt to do individual reviews going forward from here, as I have in the past, but these roundups might pop up here and there. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. Follow me on Twitter at DashJack for some random mice tweets. Join up on the Discord server and check out the Mousecast podcast. And with that, we'll see you.